Bloom, a podcast series for graduate studies at Charles Darwin University.
Hello, I'm Tara Brabazon.
And hello, I'm Megan Bayliss and I'm on Norfolk Island.
Yes, so the Ambassador of Norfolk Island is with us today. And look, Megan is a very precious person in my life. I have the privilege of supervising the wonderful Megan, and I thought this was a great way to start our podcast series at CDU for graduate education, talking with Megan all the way from Norfolk Island, which captures so much about what our goal is for great international research. But we want to talk about you. So what drew you to do a PhD at this point of your life, my love?
Well, I've wanted to do a PhD for more than 30 years. I was one of those very serious students as an undergraduate because I was a mature age undergraduate. I think I was in around about 25.
Oh, so mature.
Yeah. Oh, I know, so very old, yeah. So for the last 30 years, I have wanted to do postgraduate, but because I have millions of children, I have been unable to because I've had to prioritise commitments. Yeah. So it's been a long time, and I had actually given up on my dream of doing a PhD. I'd laid it to rest because I thought I'm too old now. I have nothing new that I can contribute to a body of knowledge because everything is said. There is no new original ideas. But then through the work that I've been doing on social media, I was contacted by somebody from CDU to say, have you ever thought about doing a PhD?
Oh my goodness.
And of course I went, I would love to do a PhD. And long story short, she said, we have some scholarships available, maybe you should look at that. And I went, yeah, okay, maybe. And she said, oh, by the way, it closes on Monday. And this was a Friday afternoon. So I had a look and I made application, but because my academic journey is not straightforward, I am published a number of times, but I'm not published in scientific journals. I'm published in grey materials, yes, and I'm published in edited magazines. Wow. And I've mainly written for the mental health of children. Right? So it wasn't quite the normal process. And I thought there's no way that I will be accepted. Well, Tara, bugging me dead. Apparently it was you on your very first day at CDU that signed off my non-traditional application.
I did.
I've worked in so many different places, and I've done TED Talks. I'm not scared of the camera, so I'm willing to get up and to orally defend what it is that I believe in and that I'll work towards. Even if I don't believe it, if I'm working towards it, let's have discussions about that. Sorry?
And I was going to say, and that's an absolute dream for us, because so much of what we dream of in the Australian doctorate particularly is about that oral communication. Because we don't have a viva at the end, most universities don't have a viva, I think we underplay the oral communication skills, Megan. And so yes, what I hope your leadership and where your leadership will take us at CDU is making students comfortable with this mode of communication of their research.
Yeah. Well, I guess that I grew into it because I've lived rural and remote a lot, a real lot. I'm born and I grew up in Papua New Guinea. I've lived for a good portion of my adult life in far north Queensland, including working throughout Cape York Peninsula, where often internet doesn't work. Yeah. I've also lived in Alaska and I've lived in London, and Sydney, so I've done some mainstream, but my entire area of practice has also been towards supporting people in rural and remote areas to have a voice. Oh, wow. To have a voice however they can. Right, so I guess I have been conditioned into it, but I also use the internet to absolutely get a message out. And I find that fascinating because computers only came into my life when I was 27 years of age. That is how old I was the day that I turned on a computer for the first time. Amazing. And I was at university and I went, wow, Like, this stuff was going to change my life. It didn't only change my life, obviously it changed the world.
Yeah.
So now, at 60 years of age, coming back into academia and having access to libraries of information, to be able to communicate with colleagues across the globe in other universities. It's a dream come true for me, and it's a dream come true for people who live in rural and remote places. For CDU to go totally digital in their PhD programs is just my dream, and I'm living it. Like, it's fantastic.
Look,
so thank you.
It is, and you've captured so strongly the importance of deterritorialisation, which is what digitisation does, and disintermediation. So you can deal directly, pick any academic, any colleague, any librarian at CDU, and you can meet with them directly. So as you can see, this remarkable woman, it's just a privilege to be working with you. But everyone's wanting to know, please do tell, what is the project on? This is the crucial thing. What are you doing your PhD on, mate?
Okay, so first, I am an accredited mental health social worker.
Yes.
Right? So I've lived a large part of my professional life dealing with mental health at a community level. So not working for the government, but at a community level. So what I'm looking at now is the constitution of peer-reviewed evidence and the development of a framework to evaluate lived experience programs. So lived experience is people with mental health challenges, and we're talking capital L, capital E here.
Yes.
So not lowercase, which is, we've all got a lived experience of something.
Yes.
But capitalised LE is the people who they've come through recovery of their mental health challenges, and they purposely use that vulnerability, those challenges, to help educate other people with lowercase LE. So I'm looking at that, but specifically at the use of capital LE, lived experience educators, in primary and secondary schools in Australia.
Wow.
Our universities have been using capital LE, lived experience educators, to educate tertiary students, but that's too late.
Yep.
We need to educate our young people and their families as well, and we need to normalise that the lived experience of mental health, it's actually okay to talk about it. It's okay to be vulnerable. We get over colds, we get over COVID. You can get over you can get over mental health challenges as well. Move through the other side and go into recovery, which is about reclaiming your right to live your mental health experiences how you want.
Yes.
Right? So I'm looking at all of that, and I'm juxtaposing it to a program in Melbourne called Speak and Share.
Speak and Share.
Speak and Share.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So they're all about, let's talk about our vulnerabilities, let's share them with a supportive group, and they go into schools.
Yeah.
But we've got a lack of evidence, a lack of evidence-based practice to support why we should be allowing these people into schools. So I'm really interested in filling that gap and contributing in a beneficial way to the body of knowledge.
And see, this is important to me. And again, I had the privilege of reading a first piece of work from you on the weekend, and it really transformed my life. And what that first piece of work was doing was exploring the very nature of evidence. So it was this incredible epistemological piece about, okay, well, we need evidence for the success rates of these very important programs, but how do you know what success is? What does success look like? And of course, that asks the key question, what does evidence look like? Now, this has changed my universe. This is huge. Talk to us about that.
Yeah. So there's so many different types of evidence. And throughout my lifetime, I've done a lot of court work. So my first training was as a sexual assault worker, and I specialised in child sexual assault. So I'm always in court supporting the victims of sexual assaults. And after there was a change in the criminal code, the court system accepted the stories and the memories of people who had been affected by sexual assault as evidence.
Wow.
So their memory was evidence. But then I look at the lived experience movement, and it's not everybody across the globe who accepts their experience as evidence. So there's a real mismatch within our judicial systems and within legislature that says that evidence is all of these different things. Well, what is the evidence? How do we create an evidence base for lived experience? How do we do this? And how do we do it in a way that mum and dad or auntie and uncle or cousin and friend sitting around the table, that they can consume this information? I strongly believe that this is not information that belongs only to academics, and it certainly does not belong only in university libraries. It belongs in the hands of the person on the street. But they need to know, what do they need as evidence to lift the game, to lift the belief, to lift the programs that they're involved in.
Yes, and the credibility too, and the credibility of memory and this exploration and this presentation of a human's life at its darkest point. I think all of that is crucial.
Absolutely.
And I wonder if, I mean, again, this could be completely wrong, is this a two-phase doctoral program, do you think, whereby you are firstly configuring what is evidence within a formal discourse? So what is evidence for this lived experience program to demonstrate efficacy for funding, efficacy in teacher education programs and so forth? And that's the first stage. And then the second stage, in a Gramsci-esque fashion, is then the organic intellectual mode. So how we take that evidential base and then disseminate it in a way that's meaningful. But I wonder if they're two separate paradigms. They're connected, but you need one before the other. I don't know.
Yes, absolutely. I don't think I can go towards Gramsci's organic intellectual until I also look at what evidence is and the history of evidence.
Yes.
So yes, and then there's the third step in this as well. So there's three stages. The third step is actually producing something that the person on the street can use. And that's also really connected to Gramsci's philosophies on the organic intellectual. Now, speaking of organic intellectuals, I'm really motivated by the work of Brené Brown.
Yes.
Now, it started not as a personal love for me, because I actually saw her books coming out in the earlier 2000s and just rolled my eyes. You know, here's another pop psychologist. But as part of my practice, I always made the effort to read what my clients were reading. And in my counselling room, I was hearing people talk about Brené Brown. So I reluctantly read one of her books and went, oh my God, this is actually quite deep. So I read it a second and a third time, and I kept getting different layers of information from it. And of course, Brené Brown, I then found out, is a social worker.
She certainly is.
She was dealing with, or she had developed through grounded theory, social work theories. Right? So I began to look more seriously at it, and I loved the way she wrote grey literature. I loved the way she wrote for the people who could consume it. So in her communication style, she crossed the gap between academic language and people on the street language. And I found that incredibly valuable. So from that, I started thinking about, when I started thinking about the PhD, I started thinking about her style of writing and how that fits in with bibliotherapy. So bibliotherapy is actually a tool that's used in psychoanalytic theory a lot. But then I also started looking at, how does this fit in with Joseph Campbell's The Hero Story, his monolith theory. So I became interested in all of that. And that was what made me brave enough to say, I want to use the four-step shame resilience theory of Brené Brown. So I got game enough to actually say it out loud, and it was met with some concern. But working through that concern, that is what I'm now doing. I'm using Gramsci. I'm using Brené Brown.
Wow.
Yes. and I'm really happy with that. Yeah.
I think it's absolutely amazing. And look, I'm thrilled by this, and I'm thrilled that you and I have sort of met each other at this point of our lives, because I've always been intrigued by Brené Brown. I think she's a fine writer, she's a fine scholar, fine US scholar, and she thinks deeply about the audience for academic work. So I'm interested in her from that perspective. And also in a time when we've got a series of public intellectuals that are on the right, politically, traditional academics like the Jordan Peterson. I'm fascinated that a Jordan Peterson exists in the same historical period as a Brené Brown. I'm fascinated by that. I'm also fascinated that Jordan Peterson has an audience, particularly with young men, and Brené Brown obviously has an audience that is of women of all ages, but men do listen to it as well. So I think there's a lot about the public intellectual, the dissenting intellectual, the organic intellectual that's really important to this conversation, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And in my thesis, I am going to look at the three and give examples of the three. I probably won't be giving examples of Jordan Peterson's work for personal philosophic reasons.
Yes.
Like I do identify as a dual feminist, which takes in Marxist and radical theories.
Yes.
So I don't think that Jordan and I would ever see eye to eye.
No.
So I'm going to leave him out. But there are other people. I can't overlook him. He is loved by some people, by many people.
Yes.
But my own philosophy is that it's quite possibly because he's male. And in those traditional fields, men are still seen as more important in spreading an idea than women are.
Yes, and I think you've handled that brilliantly. He's important. Both of them are important because they're both academics and they're both part of popular culture, and that's a rare and difficult thing to do. One from the right, one from probably, as you and I have often talked about, Brené Brown's politics is complicated. I would put her on the left on a progressivist framework, particularly on her work on race. I think some very strong work being done on race and understanding the generational consequences of slavery in particular. She's very strong on that. But I agree. I think the idea that they're both popular, both have disseminated in different ways, I think both of them are quite interesting models for your consideration with this project, I think.
Yeah, they're both interesting, but look, it comes down to algorithms for me.
Yes.
I don't want to mention that other person's name because I don't want their stuff popping up on my computer all the time. Right? So,
I understand that. And look, as someone who's written a book on Jordan Peterson, can I say it's a very, very unhappy algorithm to be poked with on a daily basis. But you're doing an amazing job. Is there anything that worries you, though? Because obviously this is a major moment for you. This is a commitment for you, your wonderful family from Norfolk Island. As we're sort of reaching the end of our first podcast together, are there worries or concerns you have that I, as your supervisor, have to be conscious of moving forward?
Of course. And my worries, I counsel myself around my worries, but these are real worries that I'm sure will be impacting other people as well. The first one is, am I smart enough to contribute to the body of knowledge? Am I smart enough to do this? So imposter syndrome grabs a hold of me at times, and I have to have a good, strong talk to imposter syndrome and send him packing. So there's that. The other one is age-related. Am I too old to do this? But all I've done there is I've flipped that to become a motivator. I am 60 this year, so Megan, hurry up. Yeah, absolutely. And so many people never get to be 60. I'm absolutely privileged, and I'm living my life for them. You and I have both had husbands who have died.
Yes.
So death can happen at any time to anybody and very quickly.
Yes.
So I'm living my life for all of those really intelligent people that never got the chance to do a PhD, right? So I'm wanting to fast track Tara.
Yes.
I don't want to, wait 3 years, 6 years, 10 years to be pulling off my PhD. I'm doing this
at speed
because I'm doing it.
Exactly,
and
we're doing it.
I treat it as a job.
Yeah, and you are, and it's remarkable to supervise you. And the gift, I think, that no one talks about, the ageism that exists in doctoral programs around the world is catastrophic, and I think part of that enables the mental health concerns that we see. But at CDU, we have this bizarre and wonderful sociological configuration where 60% of our students are over the age of 40.
Yeah.
And what a blessing that is, because these are people that have worked themselves out, who have suffered, who have parked themselves and their aspirations for other human beings, and at this point want to become the star of their own lives. And
absolutely.
You know, and your inspiration and your leadership, I think, will transform doctoral education at this program. So let's see how we go, and onward and upward to the COC, the confirmation of cancer.
Yes.
We go, my love. Lovely to talk with you.
Thank you, Tara. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to this podcast from Charles Darwin University. If you are interested in our graduate programs, please feel free to contact me, Tara Brabazon, at CDU.